Hello everyone, Ember Power here, and welcome back to a new video. In this one I'm going to be taking a look at a bunch of new Paradox set reveals from the set Paradox Rift. So basically Pokemon went and revealed a whole load of new cards, which is super unique. Like you wouldn't expect them to reveal this many new cards for a set, but here we are, not complaining. But to kick things off, we have Iron Hands EX, which says on the translation has 210 HP, but it does in fact have 230. So it is a very big, bulky EX Pokemon. It's two prizer, no, it's a single prizer, but two prizer, retreat cost of 4, very big Pokemon. Has 2 attacks, Arm Press and Strength Amplifier. Arm Press does 160, which in all honesty isn't terrible, still 2-queuing most stuff. But Strength Amplifier does 120, and if your opponent's active Pokemon is knocked out, you take an additional prize card, which is for 4 energy, but we do have Generator and of course Flaffy. So super interesting attack, of course. It's very reminiscent of the Lugia EX from the Plasma era, which is interesting. So they're kind of like repeating some past card signs from that era, especially with like the A-Specs coming back, which is interesting to see. So very, very strong attack, of course, if you can actually get a KO with it. Now, Miraidon does have some other modifiers to work with, like the Regieleki VMAX, which will work here, which is nice. So you could hit something with Miraidon or even something like a Regieleki, like the single prize version. And then you could come in there with an Iron Hands EX to finish it off and take multiple prize cards. And of course, again, stuff like Lost Zones is really strong, so you can just knock out a Comfey or Cramorant and take 2 prize cards. So, yeah. In all honesty, I think this is really strong. In Standard, maybe not as strong as Expanded, because, of course, we have Thunder Mountain expanded, as well as like Tapu Koko Prism and Electropower. So I do think this card will be a bit better and expanded, but still, it's also worth mentioning actually there is a future capsule tool card thing that basically says this future Pokemon has no retreat cost and deals plus 20 damage. So Iron Hands would have no retreat, so 4 retreat goes down to 0, and it would also be doing 140 base for Strength Amplifier, which of course 2-hit KOs stuff like Arceus and Giratina, which is pretty relevant. So very strong card, and it's honestly a great sign of the cards to come because, in my opinion, the cards only get better from here on out. Maybe not with Slitherwing, though. Like, Slitherwing's a bit underwhelming. It's an ancient Pokemon, but it's single prize. That's pretty decent. Means that if we ever get some more ancient Pokemon synergy, then we have a nice single prize option to work with. Does have the attack Trample, which says discard 1 card from the top of your opponent's deck, which I think is worth mentioning because control decks often have to rely on, like, small HP single price Pokemon for the mill 1 effects, like Bunnelby, for example. Now, you can, of course, find those with Level Ball, but in case you wanted just a bulkier Pokemon to mill cards with, then Slitherwing could be a nice option. It also has access to the Ancient Capsule tool card, which we'll look at later, that does increase Ancient Pokemon by plus 60 HP. So, this could be a 200 HP Pokemon that's milling 1 every turn. Could be okay in a control deck in the right situations, just worth mentioning. Also, Billowing Burn does 120 and then 90 to itself, unfortunately, but your opponent's active Pokemon is now burned. So it's basically doing 140 minimum. So it's honestly an okay effect. I really wish we had like Protection Cube back in this format, but the 90 to itself is pretty brutal, especially when Cramorant does 110 going second. It's a bit of a sad comparison to have to make there, but Cramorant is just more efficient than Slitherwing. But still, fun card to play out with, and I'll be trying it out, especially in some sort of ancient Pokemon deck. But we also have Sandy Shock's EX here, which is based on Magneton, which is really funny. So it's a 220 HP fighting type EX basic, so weak to grass, which is interesting. Has the ability Magnetic Attraction that says, if your opponent has 4 of your prize cards remaining, you can accelerate a basic fighting energy from discard pile to Sandy Shocks, which is really strong because it doesn't have to be on the bench to use his ability, which is nice. So you can just promote it to the active spot and use the ability as soon as, another Sandy Shocks gets knocked out. But of course, the attack isn't super powerful, only does 200 damage and then says you can't attack during your next turn. So the attack is kind of underwhelming, so you'd probably have to get like energy switch involved and stuff to accelerate the energy to other stuff like Roaring Moon EX potentially. Could be cool. I'm not sure though. It seems like out of all the X's, I think this one might be the worst, but it doesn't seem terrible either. The ability is pretty strong at least. Next up though is we probably have my favorite card, I think, out of all the reveals. And that is actually going to be this Iron Jugulars. Now, this is honestly a really haunting artwork. Surprisingly, they went all out for this, but 130 HP colors Pokemon with the Future Tool card, so you will be able to give this thing free retreat and plus 20 damage, which is pretty relevant because it has two pretty strong attacks. Now, Homing Heads for 3 colors does 50 damage to 3 of your opponent's Pokemon that already have any damage counters on them. So you can, of course, combo this with stuff like Radiant Greninja in Lost Box, or, like Radiant Greninja in Palkia, which is interesting. You could also use this with stuff like Mismagius and like Raihan, Double Turbo Energy, that kind of thing. So really fun attack. Also worth mentioning actually is Iron Valiant EX, which is already placing damage counters when it moves from the bench to the active spot. So, this thing could be very nasty and just a very strong attack. But even if you don't want to use that attack, the second attack is also really strong. So for a whopping 5 energy, it does 150, which sounds absolutely pathetic. But it says if this Pokemon has a Future Boost energy attached to it, its attack cost is 3 colors instead. So very strong because, of course, the capsule does say that you do plus 20 damage and you have free retreat. So you're basically doing 170 for 3 colors on a single prize basic. Seems very strong, to be honest, especially when you have the first attack to work with. So yeah, I honestly think this card will be super strong. I think it doesn't have like any immediate applications outside of maybe Lost Box, but still one of the most interesting cards we've seen in a while, in my opinion, and definitely a super cool one. And, I think it'll be a very fun card basically to try out. Definitely excited for this one. Then, of course, we see the capsules we've been mentioning beforehand. Future Boost Energy Capsule is probably the better one of the two, plus 20 damage, and no retreat cost is super huge. Ancient Booster isn't as strong, but still plus 60 HP is a massive modifier to have. So you think like back to Sandy Shocks, for example, you give it 208 HP, or Slither Ring, you could give it 200 HP. Roaring Moon EX, similar story, get up to 290. So very strong tool cards overall, very strong both of them. Then we see like some trainers that will help Paradox Pokemon. So Sada's Determination. Surprised they didn't use the AI professors for these, but I guess they want to save them maybe for the alternate arts or future cards. But Professor Sada's Determination says choose up to 2 of your ancient Pokemon and attach a basic energy card from your discard pile to each of them. Then you draw 3 cards. So, like the obvious comparison is stuff like Welder. I think the more appropriate comparison, though, is actually Melanie, to be honest. If this feels like more like Melanie, but on steroids. Melanie has been a great supporter at certain times in the TCG, to be honest. So I do think the supporter is very strong. It's obviously a bit more niche than Melanie and Welder were because you can only do it to ancient Pokemon. So this is very much tied to how good ancient Pokemon end up being. But of course, we need to power Roaring Moon EX, which has one of the strongest attacks in the game, really. So yeah, definitely think this is a strong supporter card. It's not like incredible and stuff because Roaring Moon takes 3 energy. So if you whiff a mana attachment, you'll fail the attack. Turn 1 going, you won't be able to get it off in 2 turns, is what I'm saying. So you do have to be careful that you don't whiff energy attachments as well. But still, a very strong effect to have in a ancient Pokemon deck. And you also have the Earth Vessel, which has decent synergy. It says you can discard a card and search your deck for 2 basic energies. So it's basically like a nerfed version of Professor's Letter, but still a very good card, especially when combined with Sada's Determination, or even in other decks like Chen Pao, for example, that just wants more energy in the hand. So also Goldengo EX as well, actually. So Earth Vessel, definitely a very strong item card. I think this will be pretty expensive when it comes out. Then we have Professor Gigachad over here, or Professor Turo's Scenario. Please load, thank you. Put one of your Pokemon in your hand, scored all cards attached to it. So it's basically just an AZ reprint. Bit lazy, to be honest. I'd prefer they did a unique supporter for future Pokemon and then just reprinted AZ as it is. But still, AZ was a very strong supporter. It's been used for stall decks and stuff because you can just remove all the Pokemon in play and leave dolls and substitutes in play, basically. So interesting combinations of cards, potentially. Could be cool. Also, could just be used to move Iron Valiants and Comfeys and stuff like that. But in all honesty, I don't think this has amazing applications right now. At least compared to Sada's Determination, that definitely will see play. I think Turo's Scenario is at least a little bit more niche for the time being. I mean, of course, you can loop stuff like Pidgeots to get damaged, but yeah, could be interesting. Then we have one of the strongest items probably revealed here. It's Techno Radar. It says you have to discard a card from your hand in order to use it, just like the Earth Vessel. It says search your deck for up to 2 future Pokemon cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand. So it is future Pokemon. I initially thought this was just future cards, which would have been insane to be fair. But this is future Pokemon, so you could use this to find the Iron Jugulars. Iron Jugulars, yep, that was a future Pokemon. You could also use it to find Iron Hands if you really wanted to, as well as, stuff like Iron Valiant. So Iron Valiant in combination with Iron Jugglers could definitely be a deck here. So, yep, very, very strong item. Then we see Mela, which is kind of like Raihan, I guess. It's like a weird cross between Raihan and stuff like Bianca from the past. So you can only play this if something was knocked out during your opponent's last turn, and you attach your basic fire from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon. If you do, then you draw until you have 6 cards in hand. So, not a terrible effect, to be honest. It's pretty decent, if anything. It's obviously like not as good as Raihan, I would say, really, just because Raihan also has the additional effect of tutoring out any card from the deck, which is very strong in most situations. But in honesty, I don't think Mela is terrible, especially when Raihan rotates. And of course, like even in something like Charizard EX, this isn't terrible because like if your opponent knocks out a Charizard and then they play a Path to the Peak, then you won't be able to use Charizard's ability to accelerate energy to itself. So then you could come in there, use Mela, draw more cards, Red Candy Charizard, accelerate the energy, get another Charizard attacking. So yeah, definitely think this card is pretty strong. Then we have Tulip, which is even more Psychic Pokemon support. They really want to push Gardevoir, I guess, but put 4 in combination of Pokemon and basic energy back from a discard pile into your hand. Pretty strong effect. It's basically just Nessa from Vivid Voltage, but instead of water, it's Psychic. Still a very strong card overall. We'll probably see play in certain Psychic decks. Then we see the other Paradox Pokemon that were revealed at the World Championships. The big ones, of course, being Roaring Moon with that Frenzied Gouging attack, which looks very strong. And then, of course, Iron Valiant, I think, was the other strongest card, really, from those reveals. But yeah, let me know what you think of these reveals. Pretty hyped, to be honest. A lot of new playable cards. It's good to see that Paradox Rift will be, a very impactful set. And even cards like Earth Vessel that don't necessarily just help Paradox Pokemon, they do help Goldengo and Chien-Pao. Always cool to see. So yeah, it's been Emma Power. Let me know what your favorite cards are down below. And yeah, thank you for watching.